Good evening and welcome to this special Election 2016 edition of Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Tonight's show is a debate. We'll hear from candidates competing in the Republican primary for Arizona's Congressional District 5. As with all of Arizona Horizon's debates, this is not a formal exercise. It's an open exchange of ideas, an opportunity for give and take between candidates for one of the state's most important offices. As such, interjections, even interruptions, are allowed, provided that all sides get a fair shake, and we'll do our best to see that that happens. CD5 is located in the East Valley in the Phoenix metro area. It includes Gilbert, Queen Creek, and parts of Chandler and Mesa. The seat is being vacated by Republican Matt Salmon. 4 candidates are competing in the CD5 Republican primary. They are former GoDaddy executive Christine Jones, State Representative Justin Olson, and former Maricopa County Supervisor Don Stapley. State Senate President Andy Biggs is also running but declined an invitation to participate in tonight's debate. Each candidate now will have 1 minute for opening and closing statements. Earlier, we drew numbers to see who goes first, and that honor goes to Christine Jones.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Christine Jones. I'm a conservative business leader who's created jobs and balanced budgets. I'm not a career politician, but I am running for Congress because I think we need to fix the mess created by Washington politicians. We simply cannot wait any longer to secure our border, to balance our budget, to defeat ISIS, to do so many of the things that matter to ordinary citizens every single day. It would be my high honor to represent the East Valley in Congress, and I ask for your support.
All right. Thank you very much. And for our next opening statement, we turn to Justin Olson.
Well, thank you for having me here this evening. My name's Justin Olson. I was born and raised in the East Valley, where my family's history goes back several generations. My wife and I have chosen to raise our children in Mesa because we share the values of the community. It's a great place to live and a great place to raise a family. I'm running for Congress because, like you, I am very concerned about the future that our children face. I'm concerned about Washington. Washington is broken. I'm running for Congress because we need to decrease the size and the cost and the reach of the federal government. We've more than doubled the national debt under the current administration. We've got to change course. We have an FBI director who has itemized the things that a former Secretary of State did wrong and refuses to charge her. We've got to change course. I'm running for Congress because I want to make sure that we pass on a country to our children and our grandchildren that is a country that is strong and free and values our freedoms.
All right, thank you very much. And now with our next opening statement, we turn to Don Stapley.
Thank you, Ted. It is an honor to be here, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to introduce myself to those who don't know me in this district. There are a few, although I do have very, very deep roots in this community. I was born and raised in the East Valley. I raised my children in the East Valley. My wife and I are proud parents of 4 children and 9 grandchildren. So we know the people in the East Valley, and we think it's a great place to live. We have a really important task ahead of us in the next 30 to 60 days, and that is to select a leader to replace Representative Matt Salmon, who is not running again. It's a very Republican district. I'm a very strong conservative, fiscally conservative Republican, and I have a track record at the county where I served on the governing board for many years. I'm excited for this opportunity and will be happy to answer questions and ask for the support of the folks.
All right, let's get it going here. Let's start with the fact that you will be succeeding Representative Matt Salmon. Christine, how will you differ, or will you be a different representative than Representative Salmon?
Yeah, I think this is a really fair question. Obviously, I am the only non-politician in this race, sort of the one outsider and the 3 insiders. The way I differ from Congressman Salmon, who I consider a friend and who I respect a lot, is Matt has spent a lot of time in office, and he spent a lot of time as a lobbyist. I've spent a lot of time growing a business, helping to create jobs, almost 4,000 of them right here in Arizona, and doing the things that really make sense from a business perspective. And so I bring a fresh way of thinking to Congress, not the same kind of thinking that politicians would bring, not that they're bad people, but just a different way of thinking to the mix.
How will you differ from Representative Salmon?
Well, how will I differ from Representative Salmon? You know, Representative Salmon's been a great conservative leader. I've also been a conservative leader, and that's what I plan to be in Washington. You know, I fought to reduce the deficit. We had a $3.6 billion deficit in the state legislature, and I fought to change that course. So we closed that deficit balanced our budget. That's what I'll do in Washington, D.C. I mean, Christine talks about being an outsider. She doesn't live in the district. I think our district wants folks who represent the community, who represent the values and the principles that East Valley residents hold dear.
So you mentioned my name, and I will say with respect to not living in the district that we have to be very careful. I'm the wife of an Air Force officer. We've been a military family for a long time. My husband's been putting on an Air Force uniform for 40 years. We've been married for 29. If you insist on this thing where you have to live for multiple generations in a district, you will never send another military family member to Congress, and I think that's a big mistake.
I don't think anybody thinks that you need to be there for many generations, but I think voters want somebody who lives in the district, who has the opportunity to cast the vote in this election. Christine won't be able to vote in her own ballot.
Don Stapley, how will you differ from Matt Salmon?
I like Matt. He's a friend, and I respect his service and honor his service. I also honor the fact that he wants to come back home and spend more time with his family. The people of the East Valley, and particularly the area I live in and have represented Gilbert and Mesa on the Board of Supervisors for a number of years, know me. They know that I want to make government work and that I will work very hard for them to change the course of our government in D.C. We have big problems, and we've got to solve those problems, and I'm not afraid to roll my sleeves up and do just that.
Christine mentioned being an outsider. Can being an insider work when the approval rating for Congress right now is between 9 and 16%? Justin mentioned things are broken, they're not working. What are you going to do? How are you going to fix this? How are you going to change things?
You bring new, fresh ideas, and you find like-minded representatives in the caucus, in the Republican caucus, that you can work with. And there's ways to do this, and I think it comes from experience. It's not a business. It's not just about business acumen. It's really about how you build a purpose and a direction, and you move legislation to change the way the system is not functioning, to pass balanced budgets, to do the big things with the entitlement programs that we have big problems with.
The idea of running government as a business. Some folks think that's a great idea. Other folks say a business is a business and government is, never the twain should meet. How do you respond?
I can just tell you what I've had success doing in the past, and that is when I was at GoDaddy for about a decade, I helped to develop a lot of policy which now governs what happens on the internet. And the way I was very successful pushing that forward is you have to provide leadership. You go find members of Congress and find things about which they agree and bring them together and push the policy forward. I was very successful doing it in the past. It's exactly the approach I'll take now. The difference is between a business and government is that government tends to forget that you have to manage to a bottom line, that you have to have a set of metrics against which your performance is measured. You have to hire and fire people and create jobs, and those are the things that government doesn't do as well as the business sector, and that's where the business expertise really helps.
You agree with that?
You know, I think that what we need are folks that have been able to stand up to the difficult pressures that exist in public policy making. That's what I've done. You know, I've not been a career politician. I've had a career outside of politics, but in addition to providing for my family, earning a paycheck the entire time while I was serving for the last 5.5 years as a representative of the East Valley, I've also proven that I have that ability to stand up to the pressures that exist in public policy making, and they are strong, particularly in Washington, D.C. We need someone with a proven record, someone who's a proven conservative leader, and that's what I offer to the constituents of CD5.
You know, my response to this, Ted, is that I was a success and had successes in the business sector, in the private sector. There are a lot of skills that you can apply to government. At Maricopa County, which is larger than 17 states, we successfully paid down debt. We paid off all of the long-term debt. This is one of the best-run counties in America because under my leadership and with my colleagues on the board, we really set the path of not spending more than we took in. And I think those kinds of ideas are desperately needed in Washington, D.C.
Let's shift gears here. Do you support presumptive Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump?
You know, as I'm out knocking doors every day and talking to voters, that's one of the most frequent questions that I get. You know, I support the Republican nominee. I think that it's critical that we elect someone who's going to be able to fill the vacancy on the Supreme Court with a conservative. The vacancy that Justice Scalia left is a critical vacancy, and if we elect Hillary Clinton, we're guaranteed to change the makeup of the court for generations to come. We've got to get a conservative constitutionalist on the Supreme Court.
So that's a yes.
It is.
Do you support Donald Trump?
I do. I think he has a lot of business expertise. I am, concerned I think a lot of people are about some of the rhetoric that we've heard throughout the debates, but I could never vote to continue the existing liberal administration of the Obama years, and I think that's what the Democratic presumptive nominee would bring. So yes, I will be voting for Donald Trump.
Do you support Donald Trump?
Yes, I've said since day one I will support the Republican nominee. It would be a colossal mistake for this country to send the Clintons back to the White House. So I would encourage every Republican to vote for Donald Trump, not just me, but I really think we have to get behind this candidate.
All three of you have mentioned that you don't want to see X, so you're going for Y being Trump. What is it about Donald Trump, though, besides what he isn't? What is it about him that you support?
Well, first of all, he's the Republican candidate, and the people have spoken. And Justin likes to talk about a constitutionalist on the Supreme Court. We ought to just go ahead and follow the Constitution. If we're going to be defenders of it, if we're going to stand up every day and say, I'm going to fiercely defend this document, let's let it speak when the people have made their choice. So that's the most important thing for us to follow. Nevertheless, this is a time when people have said, we're sick of politicians. Enough of the politicians. Enough. We're just done with it. We need to send an outsider. That's why you got Donald Trump. And I actually agree. It's one of the reasons I'm running for office. We have to send non-politicians to Washington.
What issues do you agree with?
Well, first of all, if Christine had won her race last time around, she would be a politician. Some of us have been successful in taking the argument to the voters and have earned that support and that respect in addressing issues, balancing budgets, keeping the tax burden low, reducing the regulation. With Donald Trump, people are fed up with Washington, D.C. I'm fed up with Washington, D.C. Folks are feeling like they're not being listened to. I mean, how long have we asked Washington to secure the borders, enforce our immigration laws? We've got to represent the people. That's what I promised to the voters of Congressional District 5.
Donald Trump has said many things. You mentioned the rhetoric in your previous answer. Some of that rhetoric is pretty strong and can be awfully divisive. You still support him?
Yes. You know, there isn't a good option here. And frankly, I believe that his business experience will kick in. He has always had good, strong associates and people who work for him that report directly to him. My hope is, and my expectation is, he will select a strong vice presidential candidate. He will select strong cabinet members. And I agree with Christine and with Justin. I think the Supreme Court is one of the most important decisions that he has, and we cannot let that go to the liberals in the next 4 to 8 years.
Okay, then let's flip this. Let's say, just for an example, theoretically, that he loses, that there is a President Clinton. Can you work with the President Clinton? In other words, does the word compromise exist for you?
Well, I have been able to be successful in policy development in Washington with both a Republican administration and a Democratic administration. I have bills hanging on my wall in my office that are signed by George Bush and they're signed by Barack Obama. So the answer is yes. This again is an example of a place where you need leadership. And I know Justin wants to pretend like he's not a politician. The guy was about to become the Speaker of the House, and you can make this as personal as you want and keep attacking me. I'll be happy to attack back, but I'd rather really make this about the issues, Justin. This is an election about sending people who can provide leadership and a different perspective. That's what I bring, and that's why I'm seeking the support of the people in this district.
The idea of compromise seems like it's almost a dirty word these days. If there were, and again, this is just theoretically, if there were a Democrat in the White House, you would have to, in some ways in Washington, somehow work with that administration. Would you be willing to do that?
Well, I think that what we've got to do is do everything in our power to get the country back on the right track. And it's not on the right track right now. As I mentioned, the spending is out of control. We've got to recognize that we are on an unsustainable path, and it has to be addressed, regardless of who is in power. And that's my commitment, that I will do everything in my power to ensure that we get back on the right path, that we balance the budget, that we reduce the spending, that we lower the debt, we secure our borders, that we be an advocate for the most innocent among us, that we protect the right to life, the Second Amendment, that we have strong national defense.
The people say they don't want partisanship on, they don't want gridlock. They see that. It's a do-nothing Congress. They're calling this congressional, they've been saying this for years there. Do they have a point?
And I think they're right. The Congress has been gridlocked, and it's been ridiculous that they can't work with each other. They can't even work amongst themselves in the Republican caucus in many, many cases. So I think we have big problems. I demonstrated, and I'm not a politician, I'm really a civic leader first and foremost. I haven't even been in elected office for nearly 4 years. So I'm back because I believe I have a certain level of understanding of the federal government. I was elected the president of the National Association of Counties by my colleagues in all 50 states. I served in that role as an officer concurrently with my service here on the Board of Supervisors in Maricopa County. I traveled the country. I worked with about half of the leadership across the country who were Democrats and the other half Republicans. We found common ground and we pushed those issues forward and got a lot done as the voice of America's counties. I want to bring that same approach, and if Mrs. Clinton becomes president, we're going to have a lot of work to do. But I pledge to the voters of this district, I'll do everything in my power to keep government on track.
What can you do in your power regarding immigration reform? What needs to be done? What realistically can be done?
Well, I'm well on the record on saying you have to secure the border first. I actually published what I thought was a very thoughtful border security plan for Arizona, and the Congress clearly does not want to fix this. If they did, they would have fixed it decades ago. The real critical thing about policymaking is you have to do it in small incremental bits of improvement. Typically, universal or ubiquitous overhaul of anything fails, whether it's healthcare, education, immigration, whatever it is. This notion of fixing it all in one fell swoop generally doesn't work. So you have to fix the border, and you can fix the issue of work visas and overstayed visas and all of the things that technology can help, but you have to do it in bits and pieces. This whole just wave your hand and fix the whole thing rarely works. Congress will never fix this unless you get some outsiders, because if you have this on the left and the right and it's an electable issue, they'll always use it as an electable issue and never fix it.
Immigration reform, what do you see, and do you agree it can't be done or shouldn't be done in one fell swoop?
I agree that we've got to address our immigration problems, and frankly that Americans are fed up with the fact that Washington has ignored their demands that we secure our borders. We've got to secure our borders. We've got to enforce our immigration laws. What we have right now is an inhumane system. It actually entices immigrants to put themselves in harm's way by crossing the desert or hiring a coyote that puts them in horrible conditions in stash houses, because if they get here, then they're rewarded with some opportunities that are available to them once they're here. It's a horrible system. We've got to secure our borders. We've got to enforce our laws. We could have an employer sanction system that worked wonders here in Arizona by eliminating the draw and the inducement, in addition to securing our border and enforcing our immigration laws.
Give me immigration reform.
It has to be done. The immigration laws are broken. They've been broken for decades. There's an elephant in the room in the form of 12 million or more illegal folks who are here. Many of them with children who are citizens, and vice versa, children whose parents, really have good jobs. They're tax-paying, locally law-abiding folks. We've got to face the issue, but I like to talk about the other side of this issue. And that is my belief that the real issue that people want to talk about is our jobs and the economy. And it's indicative of the problem with immigration. What if we staple a green card to every PhD at ASU from a foreign country who wanted to stay here and build the economy? What a novel idea. How stupid are we to send them home to compete with us when they could be here creating the next Google or the next Facebook or whatever it is, technology, innovation that will continue to build the economy.
What do you do with those kids born here or brought here as infants, raised here, and their parents are undocumented? What do you do with them?
Well, there's two different groups of people you just mentioned. So
Yes.
people are born here are citizens, and
Yes.
there is a constitutional provision that distinguishes that. People who are brought here are not. And my personal belief is that you cannot grant citizenship to anybody who entered the country illegally. And that is because if you reward bad behavior, just like if you're a parent, if you reward bad behavior, you automatically require or encourage that bad behavior to consider. So there has to be a point at which we say, if you break the law, there is a consequence. We are a nation of laws and we are going to enforce them. And so I have a very firm feeling that the citizenship is not the right endpoint to the people who've entered the country illegally.
If the child was not born here, did you deport that child?
Well, okay, again, there are lots of different buckets here, right? That to say let's go deport all the people who were here illegally is a lovely political statement, but there are 12 million human beings or some number. To say that we're going to deport all of them is a logistical impossibility. So my answer to that would be maybe.
Let me jump in and just share with you my experience, because I speak Spanish fluently. I know a lot of these people very well. They are neighbors and friends, and they're frustrated just as we all are. And a path to citizenship is not the highest priority for these folks at this point. They're desperate. They want to be honest, straightforward. They want to come out of the shadows. They want to square themselves with the law. So my position is, let's treat them the way we want to be treated as families. Let's let them find a way to stay if they're working, if they're not criminals, if they have no record of criminal activity. Let's find a way to let them stay and be productive and work within the economy where they are currently working anyway, but do it legally.
Makes sense to you?
What we can't do is create an inducement for folks to put themselves in harm's way. And that's what we saw 2 years ago when the Obama administration had issued an executive order enacting the DREAM Act without the approval of Congress. It was absolutely unconstitutional. And what he did was create a dramatic human rights crisis, because this created a draw for unaccompanied minors to come across the border in search of this benefit that was recently granted. By granting this sort of blanket amnesty, we're creating that environment where we're inducing folks to put themselves in harm's way, and that's not in their best interest. It's not in the best interest of the security of our country.
Again, child born here, raised here, as American as apple pie, except not born here. What do you do with them?
We've got to secure the border. We've got to enforce our immigration laws. Your question is, should we have mass deportations? Absolutely not. But we should not grant an amnesty that would then induce more unaccompanied minors to put themselves in harm's way.
Got to stop you right there. Each candidate will now give a 1-minute closing statement, and going in reverse order of the opening statements, we start with Don Stapley.
Thank you very much, Ted. This has been an energizing discussion. I really think, by and large, we're pretty much all Republicans here at the table, except I don't know your affiliation. But, you know, we all have life skills and experience in different fields. We all come from a different perspective, but we are all Republicans, and I respect that. The difference, I think, is we want to send somebody to Congress who can work with people, who can solve the big problems. I think I'm that guy. I think I've had that experience, and I want to do it in Congress. This county, in the 18 budgets I voted on, we never raised the property tax rate. We lowered it 10 of those 18. So I'm proud of that record. I want to use those skills to do the same thing as the next congressman from Congressional District 5. Thank you for having us.
All right, thank you very much. And our next closing statement, we turn to Justin Olson.
Well, Ted, thank you so much for having me. My name's Justin Olson. As I think about the future that our country is facing, I'm reminded of the statement of Ronald Reagan when he said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We did not pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, defended, and handed on for them to do the same, or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in the United States where men were free." I'm running for Congress because I believe fervently that these freedoms that are established in the Constitution must be defended. And I will fight with every ounce of energy and passion and devotion that I have within me to defend those freedoms. I will be your voice for the conservative values that you hold dear. My name is Justin Olson. I would be honored to have your support.
Thank you very much. And for our final closing statement, here's Christine Jones.
Thank you, Ted. And thank you, Justin and Don, for being here as well. I wish our other colleague was here as well with us. I'm Christine Jones, and I'm running for Congress because as a conservative business person, I've just had an opportunity to help create a lot of jobs, most of them right here in Arizona. And I know what it's like to balance a budget and meet a payroll and to have to hire and fire people. As a CPA, I've spent an awful lot of time rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse, and there's a fair amount of that at the federal government level. And as a wife of a military officer for 29 years, I have an immense heart for our veterans and for the people who have served this country, and I want to be your representative in Congress to defend them and to defend you and to defend the very values upon which this country was founded. I'm Christine Jones. I'm running for Congress, and I'd love to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all candidates. Thank you for watching this special Election 2016 debate featuring the Republican candidates for Arizona's Congressional District 5. Keep watching Arizona Horizon for debates and political coverage in this important election year. You can find us online, a repeat of tonight's debates, see what we have done in the past and what we have planned in the future at azpbs.org/horizon. That's azpbs.org/horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.